Lord have mercy on me. I don't know what I'm doing. Hope I will be just fine if I let my feelings out. For real, I had a good time. Just had enough of your mind. But can I really let you go? No, no. I'm holding on for life, 'cause I can't escape. Escape from love. And I don't wanna die, but I can't escape. Escape from love.
Are you looking for a TV station that focuses solely on varied and unscheduled entertainment? A TV station that can also be seen on YouTube and is still available even if it is no longer live? Then we have the right TV station for you. TBS Now. The TV channel that suits your desires. Because on TBS Now, there are many series and shows to watch like local life stories, Killing and also
Warum öffnet sich jetzt wieder?
and videos from the whole TBS archive. TBS Now, a part of TBS Online.
Der Zapfsäule per Handy bezahlen?
Einfach mit Shell.
E-Autos ultraschnell laden?
Einfach mit Shell.
Und schnell mal einen guten Kaffee genießen?
Einfach mit Shell. Und so ist bei allem noch viel mehr drin. Einfach mit Shell Club Smart in der Shell-App. Bei jedem Stop punkten und tolle Vorteile genießen. Jetzt die Shell-App laden.
Alle Infos unter shell.de.
Ach, Scheiße. Ach, hör doch, also, ganz im Ernst.
Unser Geiles Webradio. Sucht DJs und Moderatoren.
Na, das hast du super hingekriegt. Ach, Scheiße. Ach, hör doch, also, ganz im Ernst.
Unser Webradio sucht noch gute Moderatoren und DJs. Wenn du genauso gut sammeln kannst wie ich, bist du hier genau richtig.
Hast du Lust auf Party? Hast du Lust auf Fun?
Schreibe uns kurz eine Bewerbung und wir werden dir so schnell wie möglich antworten. Geiles Webradio.
Let's go. I'm Maylin Lee. I wear what I want, say what I want, 24/7, 365.
Never met nobody.
I know, it's a lot. But I don't got time to mess around. Je me fromage blanc. All about that hustle, am I right? Poor town. This is gonna be the best year ever. And nothing's gonna get in my way. breakfast is ready. Coming. It's gonna be me.
Is everything okay?
I'm a gross red monster. Don't look at me. Stay back.
It's happened already?
What did you say?
Our ancestors had a mystical connection with red pandas.
Are you kidding me?
This little quirk runs in our family.
This is DW News, live from Berlin. China plans a no-fly zone north of Taiwan. Tensions are high after recent Chinese military drills in the region. We'll bring you the latest from our correspondent in Taipei. Also on the program, US President Joe Biden marks 25 years of peace in Northern Ireland and urges all parties to remember past sacrifices as they aim to preserve peace in the future. Leaked US military intelligence documents indicate that nearly 100 Special Forces troops from NATO countries have been operating inside Ukraine. And NASA unveiled its Mars simulator. Volunteers will live in the facility for a year at a time to test what life would be like for future missions to Earth's neighbor. I'm Pablo Foley-Elias. Welcome to the program. Taiwan says China is planning to close airspace north of the island later this week. The half-hour restriction is shorter than the 3 days Beijing originally proposed after Taipei protested. Taiwan says China has notified it that a no-fly zone will be imposed on the morning of April 16th because of falling objects from a satellite launch vehicle. Tensions in the region are running high following a controversial trip to the US by Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen. Beijing claims the island as Chinese territory, which Taiwan strongly rejects. Right, well, for more on this, DW correspondent William Yang joins us from the Taiwanese capital, Taipei. William, great to see you. So, what have Taiwanese defense officials said about the no-fly zone?
So the only thing that they have said so far is that they suspect it's related to an aerospace activity that's going to be conducted by the Chinese. And they didn't offer much more detail about it. But experts here in Taipei have told me that basically they view this as another gray zone tactic that Beijing has pulled out of its toolbox to basically show Taipei and neighboring countries that it has the capacity to disrupt the air traffic in this very busy flight route, and at the same time showcasing that they have other means other than military means to impose a potential blockade around Taiwan. Because as we know, this is a very tricky spot that also, I think, coincides with Taiwan's air defense identification zone in the north. And at the same time, it's also the flight information region for Taipei in the north. So it's just a very strategically important spot that China is somehow deciding to launch a satellite, which the experts say it's just uncommon.
Now, William, China announced the end of drills, but their vessels are actually still around the island and are now, of course, we have this no-fly zone announcement. So are they really over then, the drills?
So while the official encirclement-style military exercise that started on Saturday has ended on Monday, but their naval vessels continue to operate around the waters near Taiwan. The state media reported today that some of their naval vessels are conducting regular patrols and at the same time also practicing their anti-missile and air defense as well as anti-submarine drills. And I think this frequency, even though the actual military exercise has ended, is just showcasing again that China is potentially going to start increasing the frequency of this kind of military activities and to try to show and warn Taiwan about future engagement with high-level officials from the United States or other foreign countries.
Let's turn our attention to the economy now. William, China has launched an investigation on Taiwan's trade restrictions on Chinese products. So tell us a little bit about the reaction from Taiwan.
So Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, which is in charge of cross-strait relations, has basically come out and said that Beijing's move is not going to be productive to the bilateral trade and also cooperation. And at the same time, the Agricultural Council has also said that the original import restriction is in place because they want to protect and ensure that Taiwan farmers' interest is not going to be infringed or sacrificed because of the competition coming from China. And so far, I think the Economic Ministry is deciding to consider what kind of response is proper for Taipei. And coming from China, they view this as a long-standing infringement of the bilateral trade agreement that was signed about 10 years ago. So they think that it is time for them to respond. But looking at the timing of the entire investigation's timeframe, a lot of the experts are suspecting that China is intentionally timing this just right around the same time as Taiwan starts to prepare for the presidential election in January 2024. So they view this as another response to for Beijing to express its frustration about Tsai Ing-wen's meeting with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy last week in California. And I think Beijing, again, is showing the wide range of tools and its responses that it has on its hands, and it's just warning Taipei that they have to be very careful about the next move that they are going to make leading into the next election.
Thanks, William. DW's William Yang in Taipei. US President Joe Biden has called for political compromise in Northern Ireland. His visit is part of celebrations to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, which put an end to decades of civil conflict. The president made the case for enduring peace and its benefits for people on both sides of the religious divide. He also stressed that peace in Northern Ireland is a priority for both major US political parties. Biden, who often talks about his Irish roots, is now scheduled to travel from Northern Ireland on to the Republic of Ireland for a 3-day visit.
25 years ago this week, the landmark Belfast Good Friday Agreement was signed. And it wasn't easy. I was a United States Senator at the time, and I worked very closely with my good friend George Mitchell, who will be here, I believe, in a couple days. And there were no guarantees that the deal on paper would hold. No guarantees that it would be able to deliver the progress we celebrate today. It took long, hard years of work to get to this place. It took a people willing to come together in good faith and to risk boldly for the future.
All right, well, to talk more about Joe Biden's trip to Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, let's cross over now to Rosie Burchard, who is in Belfast. Rosie, great to see you. So President Biden's visit to Northern Ireland is shorter than some had expected. Why is that?
Well, President Biden addressed people of Northern Ireland, a room full at Ulster University here behind me, and he spent a lot of that speech really talking about the gains of the Good Friday Agreement, that landmark 1998 peace accord. He said that when he visited Northern Ireland in the 1990s, the early 1990s before that agreement, he said he would not think there would have been able to be a glass building like this one where he spoke in the middle of Belfast, because at that time the city was scarred by barbed wire and people were living in near constant fear of that sectarian violence, which this accord brought an end to. So he really stressed the importance of maintaining that peace and, of course, trying to promote prosperity. But this visit was very fleeting. Blink and you might have missed it. You could basically fit the entire agenda on a postage stamp. He had a brief meeting with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak before making this address here at Ulster University. And something that is because, Pablo, the whole whole Biden visit here is bittersweet, because despite the fact that peace has held in these 25 years of the Good Friday Agreement, the institutions which it lays out, the political setup for power sharing, consent-based government in devolved administration here in Northern Ireland, well, those institutions are not working, and that is down to a political stalemate among political parties here in Northern Ireland, particularly one called the Democratic Unionist Party, which is complaining about the setup for trading arrangements for Northern Ireland after the United Kingdom left the European Union. They argue that the current setup essentially threatens Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom. The UK and the European Union have tried to address those concerns with some reforms to the initial document that laid out those trading arrangements, but so far it seems that in the eyes of that political party, those have not gone far enough. So Biden's visit here, some told me, they say, is bittersweet. I spoke to one student who was in the room. He said, well, bittersweet, but that's Northern Ireland for you. He said half the time things work and half the time they don't.
Now, Rosie, tell us a little bit about you've mentioned it there, the expectation that perhaps Biden's trip could in some way help to restore the power sharing in Northern Ireland.
Well, some hope that would be the case. I spoke to some people outside the university here who said they were optimistic that it might help shift the political dial here. But we have already heard from Jeffrey Donaldson. He is the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, the party that has been boycotting the devolved government here in Northern Ireland. And he said that Biden's visit does not shift the political dynamic here. He said the UK government needs to do more to shore up Northern Ireland's ability to trade with the rest of the United Kingdom. So it looks like, according to him at least, that visit actually hasn't shifted the political mood here, although of course we'll be waiting to see in the coming days and weeks what happens next. But certainly the people that I've spoken to here are frustrated. The people in the streets are frustrated that there is no devolved government in place. Some people talking about issues with healthcare, and I've certainly heard at least one person say, well, politicians are getting paid, they should give their wages back if they're not going to sit in government. Of course, the DUP says it does want to government to be restored, but it says the conditions are not yet in place. So that stalemate for now remains.
Right, tell us a little bit more, briefly if you could, about Biden's trip to Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland.
Well, Biden has already left Northern Ireland. He is heading to the Republic of Ireland, where he will visit some of the towns where his ancestors once lived before they left for the United States. He will ring a peace bell. He will meet with the President of Ireland and the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Ireland, and he will make an address to the Irish Parliament before on Friday he makes a public speech in a town where his ancestors once lived, and he'll be doing that in front of a cathedral. Some say this whole visit is sort of a message to Irish American voters. We know that President Biden, or there's suspicion, rumours that President Biden may soon announce that he may rerun for US president in the future. So there might be some murmurings around that in the next couple of days. But certainly this part of the visit has wrapped up. Biden's visit to Northern Ireland, pretty fleeting, and now begins the next stage until Friday, his trip to Ireland.
Thanks, Rosie. Rosie Burchard in Belfast. Thanks. Let's take a look now at some of the other stories making headlines around the world. Myanmar's military rulers have confirmed carrying out an airstrike that killed dozens of civilians. These pictures show the aftermath of the attack on a village ceremony organised by groups opposed to the ruling junta. The United Nations and Western powers have condemned the strike. 4 Indian soldiers have been killed in a shooting at a military base in the border state of Punjab. Tensions there are rising over the resurgence of a separatist movement. Officials have ruled out a terror attack. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has kicked off his re-election campaign. He's criticised what he called global imperialists and pledged to boost public spending. Turkey goes to the polls next month, with Erdogan facing a tough election battle. Chile's Congress is celebrating a bill to cut the working week from 45 to 40 hours. The legislation is a victory for President Gabriel Boric. He took office last year but has failed to get support for his agenda of social and economic reform. Federal agents in the US are investigating how classified intelligence documents ended up on social media. The material, some marked top secret, includes sensitive material about the war in Ukraine. It includes claims that Serbia has agreed to supply arms to Kyiv. Serbia is the only country in Europe that refuses to sanction Russia over the war. The Pentagon briefing papers also contain sensitive material on key US allies, including Canada, China, Israel, and South Korea. Let's speak now to Thomas Silberhorn about the transatlantic relations. He deals with transatlantic relations for Germany's conservative CDU-CSU opposition. Welcome to DW. So there's a lot of speculation around these documents. Moscow says they're meant to deceive Russia. The UK has questioned their accuracy. The US is trying to uncover who's responsible. But what I want to know is, what do you make of the leaks?
Well, these are very sensitive issues, of course, but there is a need for information on what's going on in the Ukraine. There's war in Ukraine, and the United States are the biggest supporter of Ukraine, both in military equipment and in financial support. That's why nobody should be surprised if the United States tried autonomously to gain information. But we should abstain from any anti-American rhetoric in this case. It has been proven so far that some of the documents have been manipulated subsequently. So these documents have been subject of disinformation and of Russian propaganda. Russia has been the addressee of these documents, and these Russian channels, of course, make use of information for their propaganda purposes.
OK, but we have been here before. Around a decade ago, the US National Security Agency was revealed to have spied on Angela Merkel's mobile phone. So what do these latest revelations say about the relationship the US has with its allies?
Well, spying on allies is always a matter of confidence. I would prefer to exchange our views in person. And of course, we should have a trustful dialogue on all matters in this war situation in Ukraine. But it's, of course, dangerous for the situation on the ground. If these leakages, for example, concern information of how reconnaissance is done by Western partners of the Ukraine, this could offer opportunities for Russia to interfere in communication lines, for example. And that's why it's a task for American offices to elaborate the extent and origin of these leakages. This requires some personnel and time, so it will bind capacities that should be better used now for further support to Ukraine.
To what extent could these leaks affect NATO's intelligence sharing mechanisms?
Well, when it comes to arms deliveries, for example, we are already very transparent in our Western democracies. In Germany, for example, our arms deliveries are published on the internet, on government websites. Everybody can see it. We are already transparent because we are democracies and we are accountable to our citizens. Insofar, I don't see any additional information or any relevant information by leakages. However, insofar as communication lines might be affected, we have to.
Right, now, let's speak a little bit about the war in Ukraine. From your perspective, what effect or could this information have on the war there?
Most of these documents are several weeks old, so I suppose most of the information that has been leaked is already outdated. Maybe some planning had to be adjusted to a new situation, but I don't see any major effect of this information concerning the strategy of the Ukraine government in this war. However, all these information is already used by Russian channels for disinformation and for propaganda. And that's why all people who leak documents must know that not only the leaked information is subject of propaganda, but they make themselves to actors for Russian purposes. This is a matter of concern.
German opposition CDU-CSU lawmaker Thomas Silberhorn, thanks for joining us on DW. Well, staying here in Germany, government plans to partially legalise cannabis are taking shape. Health Minister Karl Lauterbach says possessing and growing small amounts of cannabis for private use will be allowed. If Parliament passes the proposals, distribution will be handled by consumer associations. A 5-year test phase will limit the sale of cannabis products to a few outlets. Lauterbach says the aim is to protect the public.
We want to prevent cannabis leading to the consumption of harder drugs. We want to better protect the youth. We want to fight the black market. We want to push back drug-related crime. We want to get a grip on the steadily increasing toxicity of the products. In other words, we don't want to create a problem, but contribute to the resolution of an unsolved problem.
NASA is looking for people with elite levels of patience and understanding. The US Space Agency has unveiled its Mars simulator. Volunteers will live there for a year to test conditions for future missions to Earth's neighbour. Located in Texas, the 3D printed structure comes with 4 bedrooms, a gym, and lots of red sand.
The facility includes a replica of the Martian environment. Not surprisingly, the ground is covered in red sand, and scattered around the room, known as the sandbox, are other pieces of equipment astronauts would likely use, including a solar panel, a weather station, and a treadmill to simulate the long trips outside astronauts would make to collect samples and gather other data. There's also a brick-making machine.
Part of the activities for a Mars mission would be, besides the geology and exploration, building and maintaining that infrastructure for life on Mars, for human life on Mars. So for humans to come and future missions to come, they want to start building out that infrastructure.
The astronauts would then go through an airlock with several doors before entering the living quarters. Dubbed the Mars Dune Alpha, the 160-square-meter home includes 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, an exercise room, a medical bay, and an area to grow crops, such as lettuce and tomatoes. The members of the first experiment team have yet to be named, but NASA says the astronauts chosen will likely have backgrounds in science, engineering, and math. They'll also be under constant surveillance to see how they handle the environment.
Besides the isolation, confinement, and the sheer distance, would be things like being able to get along. So when you're in a small habitat with, 3 other people, that can wear on you over time. And we have different experiments.
Those experiments include testing the crew's response to stressful situations, such as restricting water availability and equipment failures. NASA hopes the simulations here on Earth will allow the United States to send people to Mars in the next decade.
To sport, and in football's Champions League quarter-finals, Inter Milan beat
I've always wanted a tail. I'm a freak. We love you, May. You're a girl. Whoa. You're you!
Any strong emotion will release the panda.
Abby, hit me. Oh!
Do you know how dangerous this is? You'll get whipped up into a frenzy and panda all over.
OMG! My whole life I've been perfect little May May. But maybe I like this new me.
Mama's girls.
It's gonna be me.
geht's.
Ich bin Maylin Lee. Ich zieh an, was ich will, sag, was ich will, und zwar 24/7, 365 Tage im Jahr. Ich weiß, das ist krass. Aber ich habe keine Zeit für halbe Sachen. J'aime le fromage blanc. Die Besten werden die Ersten sein, richtig? Water! Das wird das beste Jahr aller Zeiten.
Yeah.
Und absolut nichts kann mich aufhalten. Alles klar!
May May, Frühstück ist fertig.
Komme.
It's gonna be me.
Ist alles in Ordnung?
Ich bin ein riesiges rotes Monster. Nein, schau mich nicht an. Geh weg.
Es ist schon passiert.
Was hast du gesagt?
Unsere Vorfahren hatten eine mystische Verbindung zu roten Pandas.
Soll das ein Witz sein?
Diese kleine Eigenart liegt in unserer Familie.
Du bist so süß.
Verrückt, du bist echt voll flauschig.
Ich bin ein Freak. Wir haben dich lieb, May.
Du bist unsere Freundin. Wow.
Du bist du.
Jede starke Emotion
Ja!
weckt den Panda in dir.
Abby, schlag mich.
Weißt du, wie gefährlich das ist? Du hast dich nicht mehr im Griff und pandast uns alle um.
Mein ganzes Leben lang war ich die perfekte kleine May May. Aber vielleicht gefällt mir ja mein neues Ich.
Mamis Kleine.
Stopp!
It's gonna be me.
At auction. Michael Jordan laced up these iconic black and red Air Jordan 13s in his final run for a championship in Game 2 of the 1998 NBA Finals. His airness scored 37 points and led the Chicago Bulls to victory over Salt